You're listening to the NABS Now podcast.
Not all disabilities are visible, which is why this episode is dedicated to exploring this exact topic. I'm really eager to be joined by two of our wonderful guests today. So let them introduce themselves. Lina, take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lina Howard. I, along with being blind, identify as neurodiverse.
Hello, my name is Rodger Suarez. Right now, I'm in the process to get into a college. I am blind and have a hearing loss, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you both for joining us on the show. All right, take it away, Isabel.
All right. How do you define invisible disabilities and how do they intersect with your blindness?
Ooh, this is a good one. I feel like invisible disabilities is definitely a term that speaks for itself. They are disabilities that are not easily seen or are not easily noticed in any way, shape, or form just by looking at someone. I feel like my invisible disability intersects with my blindness in a way that not a lot of people notice unless you are in an academic setting with me. You wouldn't know that I have a learning disability. You wouldn't know that I struggle with math to a point of only being at about a 6th grade level. So in that sense, my invisible disability, I'm able to conceal pretty well, and it doesn't necessarily intersect with my blindness on a daily basis. But when it does, it definitely takes a lot for me to reinvent the wheel to make sure that not only am I getting the accommodations that I need for my blindness, but that I'm also getting the accommodations that I need to comprehend the material that I might be learning.
For me, my blindness is not for me like the most hard part, because it's more, there are more training for that. I went to the DBBI center here in Virginia, and everything is fine, not too much complications. But I read braille, that I use a white cane, but with my hearing loss, it's a little bit more complicated. By the way, I use hearing aids. Not all the hearing aids have a very good quality. Like the audio is not, in some hearing aids is not clear, the audio, so that affect me. Also, because English is my second language. My first language is Spanish, and it gives me some trouble of learn in general, because sometimes there are some letters, like for example T, P, D, B, V, and M, sometimes that I cannot identify or hear very clearly. I confuse those sounds about in school. Also, it's a little bit, complicated, because I had a little bit my learn on that way that I don't understand pretty much in the same part. I usually ask again and ask for repetition plus my English. So, it's not impossible, but a little bit, it's okay, some things that we have to learn.
Thank you both for sharing. That was so full of insight. I feel like you guys already covered this next question I was going to ask. How did you first become aware of your invisible disabilities? Was it challenging to receive proper diagnosis?
I first actually became aware of my invisible disability when I was quite young. I was originally told about it. And when I was that young, I was around maybe 5 or 6 years old when I was told about the fact that I have a learning disability. At that age, it's not really registering that like you learn differently than everyone else. And so after I was told, I kind of just went about life still thinking that everyone learned the way that I did, until I started looking around my classroom one day and realized that I was one of only maybe a few people getting one-on-one help in my classroom. I was one of only a couple people being pulled out of my classroom at inconsistent points throughout my school day to work individually or in small groups on assignments or on other concepts that my classmates were able to just get in a heartbeat. So that's kind of how I started to realize that I learned different than other people, is that I started to really become observant and really start to compare myself to peers of my own age. And that was definitely a challenge, both academically and socially. because that did lead to social isolation. That did lead to me not being able to relate to my peers in some ways because I couldn't do math the way they did, or I couldn't read as fast as they could, or I couldn't grasp different social situations in the way that they could. So in that way, yes, it was very much a challenge.
I mean, as I lost a lot of my hearing when medicine, and I was a time couple months, like 5, 6 months, that I didn't hear like a lot. My degree is like moderate to severe, so I didn't have my hearing aids for that couple 5, 6 months. So when I first wear hearing aids, everything was like so different to hear. Like for example, outside doors, when it's windy, pretty much the hearing aid has a microphone. When the wind is like hitting the microphone, you that like cover a lot of your hearing. With my orientation and mobility classes, for example, outside I couldn't hear pretty much my instructor, or yeah, when I'm outside, like listening to traffic, also is a little bit complicated. So yeah, it's still being kind of hard. I still trying to custom, and also I changed whole year and a half, 2 years around. So each new hearing is different. So so yeah, I mean it's still being like the process of adapting my hearing. So yeah, it's a little bit challenging.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you guys for that. I know you've shared a little bit about some of the challenges you've faced with your invisible disability, but in addition to that, we wanted to know what are some unique challenges you've faced as someone with both a visible and invisible disability?
Ooh, yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, given that I have a learning disability that affects my ability to do math, is the way that I learned how to do basic math skills. For many blind students, who don't necessarily need any extra supplemental learning, you are able to maybe replace a lot of the visual graphics with tactile work or with math manipulatives that are easily comprehended through tactile learning. But for me, it was that and then some. So I needed that tactile feedback. I needed all of the supplemental material replaced that was in print, and that resulted in a lot of trial and error for me, especially learning basic math skills where other blind students were able to get away with maybe the Nemeth code. I was needing some help comprehending the Nemeth code and therefore needed more tactile graphics or more physical sort of elements to help me learn basic math skills. So in that way, learning those basic skills with the adaptive ways that blind students learn already, combined with then having supplemental material to have to comprehend on top of that, is a lot. It can be very stressful, especially for a student who is 5 or 6 years old, like I was.
Yeah, for example, with my blindness, that is, people can see pretty much the cane or you read braille. So when I am around blind people, like when I go to some NFB conventions, things like that, they cannot see my hearing aids. So sometimes I can, yeah, it's different because sometimes I cannot hear them. So it's a little bit complicated. Also, even size people, it's kind of hard to that they see my hearing aids because are kind of like small and black, and there is the black color. So it's confused with my hair that is black also. So for example, in a classroom, it's hard for me to listen because when it's like a big space, sometimes it makes some echo. Also, when many students are speaking at the same time or outside doors, how to say. So yeah, it's different. That people don't realize like immediately that you have hearing loss.
So, have you both found any support networks, whether that be within the Federation or outside, externally, places specifically tailored to individuals with intersecting disabilities?
Ooh, this is a really good question. And the short answer for me is no. Unfortunately, within the Federation, I think we are still dealing with a bit of a philosophical change in the way that we view blindness as it intersects with other disabilities, both visible and invisible. And I think we are definitely moving forward in being more accepting and catering to people who do have other disabilities. But I think we still have a ways to go to be able to get to a point of having a good, solid support system within the Federation for a wide variety of other disabilities that are not blindness. As far as things outside of the Federation, I have found a few different Facebook groups that cater to people who have blindness along with other invisible disabilities. I've been able to make a few connections from those Facebook groups and been able to talk one-on-one with a few other people who have been in relatively the same situation as I was in or have been in. But yeah, unfortunately, aside from being able to make those one-on-one connections from that handful of Facebook groups, there's not really a solid support system that's widely known out there that I have found, at least.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah, not really. I think there is pretty much like focus in blindness. There is very good that it helped us a lot also. But for my hearing, I'm not sure if I didn't maybe how to say, like investigate enough yet. But the only thing that I hear pretty much is that also I'm not sure it came from the federation that they have guide dogs that is special for people that have some hearing loss. I hear about it. I want to actually get a guide dog in the future, and that's something great. How I said before, maybe I didn't investigate a lot yet, but that sounds something great. I'm not sure how those guide dogs like work with the owner, but how I say I would like to have one. But out from that, no, how I said it's very, especially for blind, it's kind of like very invisible that I have hearing loss. We pretty much have to say, and also there are not a lot of like tools, in the conventions. They like, speak the microphone and in big space. It's like how I said before, the echo, hard to hear. But I think there is something more like a minifies the hearing loss. But I think that there are some situations that we have to learn how to live with it. They're not always going to like to resolve all your, not to cover maybe all your disability, but it's great that it pretty much the most that is possible try to cover, how to say the most possible of that disability, but not really.
Excellent. Thank you both for sharing.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think this question, I'm actually really excited to hear your perspectives on this. I think it's a great follow-up to the support networks that you either have found or haven't. So what role does advocacy play in creating inclusive environments and addressing the needs of individuals with invisible disabilities and blindness?
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy about this question. You have no idea. So I think that advocacy plays a very integral role in making sure that we can get comfortable, really, with disabilities that are not just our blindness. I feel like sometimes we can get very caught up in one disability or another and make that our entire identity, when in reality, some of us may be struggling with multiple disabilities. And I think it's a very fine balance that we need to be able to learn, not just about ways in which we can make the world better for those who are blind, but also ways in which we can celebrate other disabilities as well as the intersection of making the world a more accessible place for those who are blind and who have multiple disabilities. And I think if we can, as blind people, keep an open mind and be willing to learn about multiple identities and about how invisible disabilities intersect, I think that's going to be really important in furthering our advocacy skills, both in and out of the Federation, to make sure that everyone, boldface, all caps, has a shot at living the life they want.
A part that I see about this already, how I said, is the guide dog that are special for blinds that have some hearing loss. That's a very, I think that is a very, very good advance or rate of this. Also, yeah, I mean, because sometimes blindness came with all other disabilities. My disabilities came for different reasons and different times, but pretty much knowing by other people or even other disabilities, can be the opposite. By the way, it would be great for do that, more for realize how many different disabilities we can have at the same time with blindness and how we can help all those disabilities the most together possible. Maybe see something that help blind people, for example, hearing loss or people that have learning disabilities or other things, things that already like can help in different disabilities for different disabilities.
Excellent. This upcoming question happens to be one of my favorite because I think it's really cool. Are there any specific assistive technologies or tools that have helped you overcome challenges associated with your intersecting disabilities?
Ooh, I definitely appreciate this question. So for me, not so much now, because my learning disability doesn't tend to affect my day-to-day life, given where I'm at in my academic journey. But when I was first learning how to navigate the world with the learning disability that I have, definitely having auditory feedback, so technology that would talk to me, was very, very helpful. Being able to get all of what my peers were visually learning put into an auditory format and be able to hear it back, be able to repeat it back if I needed to, was very helpful. So basically, talking computers with screen readers on them, talking calculators were very helpful as well. If they were available, any talking toys that would have to do with math or with numbers were also very helpful for me when I was a young child trying to navigate the world with the learning disability that I have. Overall, all auditory stuff, all auditory feedback was very helpful for me.
Absolutely. Love that stuff.
So yeah, for my hearing loss, of course, that the hearing aids are there.
Mhm.
Something that is great. I mean, how I said before, each hearing aid is a little bit different. Also, for example, a couple years ago, there came with a advice of some hearing aids now can connect by Bluetooth to the devices, iPhones, to any iPhone, cell phones or tablets, iPads, even to computers or any device, electronic device. That help a lot because sometimes, I said before, when we are like in an open space, like a classroom or something, we cannot hear very well the computer or the laptop, the cell phone, whatever. So this Bluetooth advice helped a lot also. One time also in middle school, a microphone connect by something. I don't remember exactly the process, but they connect you something in your hearing aids, and then, for example, the teacher is going to have the microphone, and you can listen to the teacher, straight from the microphone. But it didn't work for me a lot because I think that more problems of the specific device, maybe the hearing aids at the time. that I used to have at the time. But yeah, that's another thing that I know that for many people that have hearing loss or use hearing aids help.
Great, Roger. Thank you for sharing.
All right. Can you share any personal stories or experiences that highlight your journey of growth and resilience or triumph over your challenges?
Ooh, okay. So I think for me, it was the experience that I will share is the first time that I was really comfortable with out loud verbally expressing the fact that I have a learning disability. It was my sixth grade year, just started middle school. It was around the beginning of the year, so everyone was kind of still being placed in classes, and my teachers, all of my support staff came to discover that I was still needing help with math skills and would therefore be placed into a smaller class compared to a mainstream class that most of my other peers were placed into. Whereas in years past, I would have been very resentful, felt very insecure about it. As everything was being explained to me, and as the decision to be placed in a smaller class was being explained to me, I was able to kind of have an epiphany of sorts in that moment that this wasn't meant to be a punishment. This wasn't meant to be anything negative in any way. It was meant to help me because of the way that it was explained to me and because of the way that my support staff were able to help me rationalize what was happening. I was able to very easily come to terms with, whereas I hadn't been in past years, very easily able to come to terms with the fact that every support person and every supplemental piece of education that I was getting was going to benefit me rather than hurt me.
Good one. Thanks for sharing. Wow. Let's go ahead and cut to the wrap up, which is something that we've started a couple months ago on the NABS Now podcast, which is called Advice in 60 Seconds. So I'm going to give you 1 minute on the clock.
Okay.
That's hard.
And you will share an advice. If someone had only 1 minute to listen to this podcast, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to individuals with intersecting disabilities who may be struggling with acceptance? Lina, your 60 seconds starts now.
If I were to say something to my younger self about my intersecting disabilities, it would be that it's okay, that you learn differently, that it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. Comparison is a very hard thing to overcome, especially when you are of the age where social situations and academic situations are very much on display for your peers to see. And so it's okay to feel insecure. It's okay to name that, as long as you go to the right support people and as long as you go to people who you know can help you along your journey to acceptance, you will be much better off than just staying silent and struggling along. So, in short, it's okay to be yourself and not worry about what other people think.
1 minute and 5 seconds.
All right. When when you have a hearing loss, use a hearing aid. It helps a lot because I know that many people that don't want to accept the disability, but the hearing aids help. Also, it's okay for you to not feel shy or bad about asking for repetition to the others. They're gonna be situations that where you feel very frustrating, very stressed, but it's always going to be a solution or something that by different ways replies that you can see it for a good way, like a new learning. Uh, just keep going, you still being able to listen something and just do your best.
1 minute and 8 seconds.
All right. Thank you both so much for joining us and answering these questions. It's not easy to come on here and be vulnerable with talking about your disabilities. I know there comes a lot of misconceptions about blindness and intersecting disabilities. So I really hope that the audience learns about the different kinds of intersecting disabilities alongside blindness and the challenges people face. And for people out there who are experiencing or who have intersecting disabilities and feel like they're alone, I hope that this showcases that you aren't. And it just goes to show that the Federation does have a diverse group of members and there is a place for everyone. So thank you guys.
It also really underscores that this is a space, this podcast, along with many other resources, can be a viable outlet and places for people with intersecting identities to find their allies and make those connections. So thank you both for participating.
Thank you for having us on.
NABS Now podcast is hosted by me, Seyoon Choi.
Co-hosted by Isabel Rosario.
Produced by James Yesel and Seyoon Choi.
This podcast was brought to you by the National Association of Blind Students, a proud division of the National Federation of the Blind.
Find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Mastodon as the National Association of Blind Students, or on our website at nabslink.org. Be sure to hit subscribe or follow us anywhere where you catch your podcast for new episodes and more, releasing every month. Thanks for listening.